Valbori vicidokar, karkobe skaden hars, homwe karn nama jumen, Gobble, gigobi kuth. Notro karnene chandri shuai, youth renyanash vine, shakar tre bichinne dilat, vubori matskarn dilaten. 8,000 years ago, a race that had lived all its life in the shadows of the earth appeared for the first time upon its surface. The sun burned their eyes. Where once they had used the words okagon, black stone, in reference to the world, now they came to call it Arakshimen, the bright sky. To this day they continue to differentiate between the black stone and the bright sky, lacking a single word to encompass both. These are the Gobi, which in their tongue means people. At that time they would have called you a gob, or perhaps a word with similar consonants, which meant person. As they encountered increasingly more people who were not goblins, however, they began using a new word in reference to all sentient life. Wixig, meaning one who knows, which is also used to mean philosopher. Gobble is not a sophisticated or high-effort conlang. In 2015, I started writing a book. I'm still writing it, but the current version is available for purchase on Amazon, with the link, of course, in the description, and the sequel may be hopefully coming out sometime soon. I knew I wanted to work with orcs and goblins prominently, to show their side of familiar stories. And to do that, I wanted to create a language for them to speak. It started with just a couple of words and took a long time to progress, but eventually my tiny notebook could not contain the entire lexicon, so I moved it to Microsoft Word instead. The grammar is necessarily simplistic. This is because I started writing on vocabulary instead of grammar, and did not yet understand the purpose of declension and conjugation. Even if I had, however, I probably would have avoided it for this language. Despite working with multiple declined languages for the elves and humans of the world I created, I wanted the goblins to speak a language exclusively based on the rule of cool. Simplistic grammar was perfect for them, and for a model, I was then still in the process of studying the perfect example: Mandarin. Despite being a tonal language, or perhaps because of it, Chinese has very simple and intuitive grammar, and I was able to draw on my college courses to make Gobble fit together. Although it is not copy-pasted, the structure can be similar. In the Chinese sentence, 如果我是船的话，你是猫. 如果 means if, and 的话 means then. In the third sentence of Gobble that I read to you at the beginning of this video, it says notro at the beginning, and then in the middle it says youth. Notro means although, and youth means yet. To most linguists, this will seem like a highly simplistic approach. But this was my first serious conlang, and simplicity was something I specifically wanted. It still is. There are many aspects of Gobble that resemble English more than in hindsight I would wish, but it also draws explicitly on many other languages. Sometimes, if I wasn't sure which sounds would fit best, I would punch the word into Google Translate and sift through real-world languages until I found one that either was perfect on its own, or else inspired me toward sounds I found interesting. There are also a number of private jokes embedded in the vocabulary, such as the names of famous people and reversed meanings of English or French words. This may break the fourth wall a bit if noticed, and it's not the most mature approach, but it did follow my cardinal rule for the language: have fun making it. After working on Gobble for 7 years, I can say that it's about as weird as I had hoped. Unlike most languages, it does not clearly distinguish between verbs and nouns. A map can mountain, and a mountain can map, or at least be mapped. Adding n to the end of a word can turn it into an adjective or adverb, kind of like ly in English, although it has morphed into other roles as well over time. Originally, the word dog was to be the only genitive, and correspond directly to the English of. However, the tacked-on N in Gobble and its daughter languages has come to take on the aspects of apostrophe S in English, making it genitive along with its other functions. My sword can be Shimtor Duk Kar, or Karn Shimtor, or even Shimtor Karn. Sometimes the O or the Do in Dog can be used alone or with an apostrophe to the same effect. Shimtor Okar. To make a noun plural, double the final consonant and add I. Gonni is dogs. Originally, this doubled consonant would have been pronounced long, but these days it takes the same amount of time to say as a single consonant, requiring the listener to rely on lexical knowledge rather than vocal differentiation. Karvishi nadone. I had dreams. The affix ne at the beginning or ending of a verb tells whether it was done in the past or will be done in the future, while nadone in the sentence above means that the dreams have been had, nenado would mean that I am going to dream. Replace ne with now in your mind. If the verb stem comes after it, it's a future verb. If the stem comes before it, it's a past verb. When the goblins lived underground, as many tribes still do, their language reflected the reality of large ears and larger echoes. The acoustics of goblin life allowed them to differentiate very closely between even slightly different sounds. Their language used to include hisses and clicks, as well as other sounds strange to English speakers, and some extant subterranean communities still do. But the language I have worked so hard on is the one spoken by those who came to the surface world. In the bright sky, their sensitive eyes were overloaded with how much light there was, except on the cloudiest of nights, and their ears suffered the opposite problem, receiving endless soft static from the boundless air. Over time, they abandoned some sounds, and or merged them with others, resulting in redundant runes. At the time in which the book takes place, kaz makes the same sound as chrome, but it used to come more from the throat, and gag is exactly the same as gash, though it used to have a slight swallow to it. Gobble has always had the E sound, but it used to not have the I sound, even up to the point at which they developed writing. Whenever they needed the I sound, they just wrote in E instead. Today, the rune Indra can make either sound, and is represented in the Turin, Latin, alphabet as Y. A consonant, yog, is also represented as Y. Sh, ch, zh, z, and th each have their own rune in Gobble, and the ch sound English typically lacks is represented by X. Dragons were the first to run their claws through the dirt for communicative purposes, but in the old days their closest creations to writing were intricate star charts, by which to inform their kin where they had flown or must fly. At some point, a goblin must have found one of these charts and decided to emulate it. Exactly when the eureka moment happened is not certain, but it came some 2,000 or 3,000 years after the Gobi first came to the bright sky. Ancient Sumerian, by real-world reckoning, is the language of the dragons, and changes little with the squeaking of eons. But cuneiform, the oldest extant writing system, was invented to write Gobble, and spread to other races including dragons from them. Eventually, linear syllabaries arrived on the scene in other languages, which inspired some scholarly goblins to return to their linguistic toils and arrive at the world's first alphabet, though they call it the igug, deriving from the first vowel in it, followed by the first consonant, followed by the second vowel, and then the second consonant. This name became popular sometime long after its initial creation, after it had been separated into vowels and consonants instead of whatever order it first came in. When the runes were first devised, some of the old sounds had already fallen by the wayside, but a few still stubbornly persisted. I wrote the following song for the second book in the series, but have removed it due to plot constraints. Hopefully, its new home here will bring you a smile. Homko sol karam lorne lor chairan, dogru goren voren logen fran. Zalg do karnbals vus miro confus, se draten zalg chai logne dos. Dai zalg sig kori brot, eigen kari drina do drige sorn. Fum gane fawage hin gorm.